Hey, good morning, Real Life. It's great to see you and welcome everybody. So glad that you are here. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Let's just kind of learn a little bit about what we did for Thanksgiving. I'm assuming you had turkey, okay, unless you're vegetarian and you had tofurkey, okay, the tofu version of turkey, whatever it is. But I want to know how you prepared your turkey. So by show of applause, how many of you, and if you're watching outside or online, just play along, okay? How many of you just did the standard roast the turkey kind of thing? Okay, good for you? Good, all right. How many of you went redneck style and you deep fried it? Okay, there we go, good for you. And then how many of you smoked the turkey, which is a cooking process, okay? A few people, all right, that's not actually like smoking it, like Prop 420 or anything like that, okay? Just FYI. All right, well, however you chose to do that, I hope you had a great time with family and friends and a lot of food, a lot of football, and there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up. So I thought what we'd do here as we get started, and this kind of ties into what we're going to talk about, we take a little bit of time and look at the calendar. Okay, do you ever do that with the family? You have kind of the staff meeting, let's all get together, look at the calendar, here's what's coming up. Let's take a look at a few events that are coming our way. Okay, this is December, which is quickly approaching, and this is Christmas Eve and Christmas, of course. Our Christmas Eve services, just so you all can start planning ahead, start on December the 21st. There'll be one here, there's two here, there's two here, and there's 50 on this day right here, okay? In fact, most of them are going to be in the afternoon and evening, but if you're a person that says, I got to go to church on Sunday morning because that's when Jesus went to church, and so that's when I'll go, if that's you, that's going to be at the Canyon Country location at 8:30 and 10 o'clock, and Valencia will be at 3 o'clock, 5, 7, 9, 11. That's right. So by 11, who knows what I'll be saying, all right? You all just go to 1 and you can go home. It'd be fine, but I'll be delirious and that'll be a lot of fun. So that's going to be this day. Obviously, this day is Christmas. And then the next weekend is our online only, and it's going to be a greatest hits of the entire year. We're putting together a whole bunch of highlight stuff. It's going to be great fun. And especially if you're with family and they don't go to church at all, you think, oh, you got to watch this because this is kind of like the best of the year. You miss church all year, you can catch up in one day. So that's that day. Now, flip the calendar to January. January 1st, great day of the year. Why? Football. There's football on all day. It's fantastic. And then on the 4th, we kick off a brand new series here at all our locations called Is God Fake News? And we're talking about, do we even need God anymore? Is God still a part of our world? Where's God? It's going to be a great, great series to get people here that have never kind of considered God, or maybe they were part of the church and they bailed. Bring them back. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, here's why I bring all this up. Because somewhere during this week right here, and we're just going to say January 17th, here's what's going to happen. It's going to be an epic meltdown in your home. And here's why. Because somebody's going to go to the mailbox and they're going to get the credit card statement. And you're going to discover what happened during the month of December on your watch. Right? And this is a conversation that's going to go on in your home. You spent what on your mother for Christmas? You didn't spend that much on my mother for my Christmas. You know, you're going to have all these arguments about, we paid what for that? You spent this, and all the arguing and all the tension about why is our credit card this high? Why is the bill so high? What are we going to do? And then you're going to start blaming people. Oh, it's all your fault. It's all your fault. I know you're 4, but you know what? You have demands. And, you know, it's all your parents' fault. And they came to live with us, and they stayed with us, and we had to fly here and do this, and I had no idea. And you told me it wasn't going to cost anything, but it did. And all that, you're going to start pointing the fingers at everybody else, and then you're going to start blaming the government. You know, well, it's the taxes, and on and on and on. And you're going to blame everybody else, but the only economy you can control is you. And so what we're going to do over the next 2 weeks, just today and next week, is we're just going to step back before we get to that week in January, and it just gets cataclysmic for all of us, and just say, what if we decided just to view our money a little bit differently? And before we get into this crazy nonsense that's going to happen the first of the year, let's step back and let's kind of reprioritize our focus for just a second. Now, here's why this is such a big deal. Because if you think about your biggest regrets, if you think about your biggest hopes and dreams, it's often hinged on money. How much money we have, what can we do, where can we go, what can we experience, what can we have? In fact, we tend to think as to the reason we don't have happiness or fun or satisfaction or comfort is all because of things out there. In other words, if the government would just get its act together, if they would just cut taxes, if they would just increase the business over here, if the economy would get better, if this industry would come back, if we get all those jobs in the film industry to come back from Atlanta and Georgia and Canada and come back over here and just settle in, and somebody's clapping, if we could just get it back to Southern California, then everything will be better, because this is our human nature. When we have struggles financially, we point the fingers at everybody else. If my boss would just give me a raise, if I just get a promotion, if I could just close this deal, if that person would finally buy something, then you know what? It would change. Here's the problem. When we do that, we get incredibly helpless because it's all based upon what somebody else is doing. Most of us spend all of our time frustrated about the economy, which is something we can't control, instead of focusing on Uconomy, which is something that we can control. This is your own personal economy. How you spend, how you save, how you give, this is your economy. Because these three areas will have a much greater effect on your financial well-being than anything that does or does not happen with the economy. So here's what we're going to do. For 2 weeks, we're going to talk about some biblical principles about finances. This is not a campaign. This is not a fundraiser. This is not a big ask for something we're trying to do. This is just a way to think about money differently so that week in January doesn't have to be so scary. And this is information that I think could be so helpful for your family. I'm going to encourage you to watch this with your kids. And even if they're in our children's ministry right now, if they're fourth grade or above, this is a great thing for you to talk about with them and just begin the discussion about finances. Because my hope is that through this series, we're going to make money fun again. Because for most of us, it hasn't been that fun. And for most of us, when we think about money, we're not all excited about it. But what if in the year 2018, money could be something we don't fight about, but it's actually fun again? Now, we have established a ministry around here. We did this years ago called Financial Freedom Ministries as a way just to help you. And it's filled with all kinds of great financial minds that volunteer their time. They don't do it so that they can sell you a product or have you buy their plan or whatever. It's just free and it's just a gift to you. Some classes require some money because you get all these textbooks and everything that go along with it. But there's great resources that come along to help you, and that is always available to you. And I'm just saying, what if for 2018 you decide I'm in on that? And so you can find that out on our website. We have a big class coming up December 9th. It's a great introductory into everything that we offer, from estate planning to writing a will to managing resources to getting out of debt, all kinds of great stuff. We want to help you with that. So here's where we're going with this. There are some incredible principles in the Bible when it comes to finances. You may not even believe in God, but you're interested in your money. You believe in your money, and you want to know how you can make it grow. And you're willing to read anything, check out anything, you're willing to listen to any podcast or whatever it takes in order to learn more about how you can manage your money. And when I start talking about the Bible and money, you think, oh, no, we don't mix God and money. We don't do that. But here's how we do that. The moment you run out of money, you start thinking, I got to pray, right? I mean, when there's like 3 days before payday and you got nothing in the bank and a bunch of checks out there, you start praying, God, slow those checks down. Okay, don't let those come through. Give me 3 or 4 days. And you think, I don't want to get God involved in money until I need God involved in money. So I need God to get involved in money then. And then once you clear that next paycheck, you're like, all right, God, you go back to wherever you were because I'm good now until I need you again. See, in the moments that we need God, then suddenly we want God involved in our money. And here's what I've noticed about my life. I've noticed when I live by these biblical principles with money, my stress level goes down, the arguments about money in our home go away, and the peace comes about us, not like an influx of cash or a windfall or a lottery or anything like that, just a peace comes that we've never experienced before. But when we don't practice these principles, when I get lazy about these principles, or I think I got a better idea in mind, but this is half off, or if I buy one, I get one free, or it's a subscription I don't have to pay for in 6 months, whatever it is, then suddenly the tension begins to rise, the stress comes back, the ends don't meet. It's amazing how that works out. So we're going to take a look at some of these biblical principles over the next couple weeks, just today and next week, as a way not for me to get something from you, but for something for you. I don't want marriages to end anymore because of money. I don't want you to grow up in a home that just hates life because of money. I don't want you to pass this on to your kids like the principles were passed on to me and passed on to you that we're trying to unwind in our lives. Once upon a time, money was fun for you. Do you remember when that was? You might have to go way back, junior high, high school days when you got money and you didn't have any bills, so it was just all your money and you're excited about it. When I was young, I had a lawn mowing business. And I call it a business because I had 2 lawns that I mowed. Okay, we were talking about franchising, but that was a whole other deal. It was just me and the lawnmower, and I got $20 every lawn that I mowed, and my dad charged me $2 for the use of the lawnmower and the gasoline. Now, gas was 98 cents back then, and I did not use a full gallon, and I know that Dad was making a little bit off the top there, and so, we settled out of court, but I'm still bitter. But anyway, that was the process. And so $20 every time, until one week, I got an opportunity where one of these families said to me, hey, we're going to be out of town for a week, so here's what we need you to do. Would you mow the lawn like normal? But would you also water the lawn every day? Would you water the plants inside and outside the home? Would you collect our mail? And would you get the newspaper as well? I said, no problem. I did that for 7 days. They get back into town. I go down there to get my money, and they gave me a $100 bill. Remember the first time you've seen one of these? It was amazing, okay? I held that thing, and it was so incredible. I could not believe I actually had $100. I felt like the richest person in the world. This was so fun. And I don't know when the first time was you got one, whether you earned it or you stole it. I don't know, but you got one. And you're looking at it like, this is so incredible. And you've got a few options with it. You could think about all the stuff you could buy right away. Oh, I could buy this and this and this, and I get the Millennium Falcon finally, and the Death Star, and all these things you want to buy. Or you think about, I could save this. I could put it in a bank account, and I could have it, and it could draw some interest. And, after like 10 years, it'll be $102, and it'll be great, So I could do that. But then the other idea was I could just have it with me to show my friends. So every now and then I pull up my wallet and I go, see if I got anything on me. Oh, yes, I have $100. Here it is. You all ever seen one of these? Yeah. And so you just kind of hang on. And so what I learned very quickly was whichever of those 3 options you were to choose, there was a limit to how much satisfaction it gave you. Because if I spent it right away, I bought something that I would keep for a while, or it would break, or one of my friends would break it, or I'd sell it in a garage sale, and then it was gone. Or if I saved it, I'd put it in that bank, and it would be there, but I wouldn't think about it anymore and be like, oh, that's not really fun anymore. Or if I'd show it off to my friends, eventually they'd talk me into spending it, and I'd spend that thing, and we'd all buy, big gulps at 7-Eleven and play, Miss Pac-Man until we were all up with $100. That's a lot of games, And at the end of it, I'd realize that even though that money was so fun for a moment, it didn't bring about that lasting satisfaction that I wanted. And in the end, we recognized what the great theologians, the Rolling Stones, once said: I can't get no satisfaction. And that's what we began to discover, right? Because money slowly became not enough. It was never enough. Now, here's the great news I have for you. God is not after your money, because it's already His. Everything you and I have is already God's, and God cares about your money because He cares about you. And God cares about your satisfaction because He cares about you. And God has loaned us His money to manage for a period of time while we're on this earth. And if we manage it the way that He wants us to, we have an ultimate satisfaction we could never have on our own. Now, I know the pushback you're having because I've had it myself, and that is, no, wait a second, that's my money, I earned it. Who gave you that job? Well, I got the job. I earned it. I got an education. I knew the right people. I interviewed for it. Who gave you the mind to do that? Ultimately, it all comes back to Him. It's all from Him. But God cares about the money because it's His, but He cares about your satisfaction because you're His. He wants you to have satisfaction, and He knows it doesn't come by just having more of these. It comes by understanding where they come from. In fact, this is the great secret that most of us just miss out on altogether, and that is that money can get you a lot of things, but only God can give you the gift of satisfaction. Money can fill your wallet, it can fill your bank account, it can fill your life with things and experiences, but only God can fill your heart with love and joy and peace. Here's the truth that we're going to talk about today, and this is the bottom line for all we're going to discuss. Money fills your life with stuff, but God fills your heart with satisfaction. It doesn't come from money. So, how do we transfer our thinking for assuming that all we need are more of these to find satisfaction when God says, no, I got something else in mind, and if you follow my basic principles of how to do this, not only will you have more satisfaction, you'll have more money. We're going to take a look at a guy who was known as the smartest man who ever lived, the wisest man that ever lived, and the richest man who ever lived. I'm not talking about Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or any of those guys. I'm talking about King Solomon. And the stories about King Solomon are not only legendary, they're accurate because we have an accurate description of him in our Old Testament as part of our Bible. And we have one of his journals, which is called Proverbs, where he writes down a lot of his life learnings from himself and from watching other people as to how things tend to work. And in this particular piece of this book we're going to read, he gives us such great wisdom about how to deal with money. In fact, take a look at one of these principles here. He says, joyful is the person who finds wisdom. Now, you would think the way we deal with life is joyful is the person who got that Lexus in the front yard, with the bow on the top, all right? Joyful is the person that got that second home. Joyful is the person that that got that lake house or got that trip to Europe or whatever it is. He said, no. That might make you happy, but joyful is the person who finds wisdom. And that's more than just being smart. That's the ability to make right choices. The one who gains understanding. For wisdom, it's even more profitable than silver, and her wages are better than gold. So the first thing he says to us is this: you want to be wise with your money, then you need to invest in wisdom. You think about the way we invest. We invest in stuff, we invest in stocks and bonds and maybe properties and antiques or things that we'll appreciate. But he says, yeah, that's fine. But put a little bit of your attention into investing in wisdom to find out the best way to manage all that God has given you to take care of. Now, you may think that's common sense. That's just obvious to everybody. But not all things are incredibly obvious. Now, I recently came across some kids' homework where they filled out different things or test results, and it seemed obvious to them, but we look at it and realize, they kind of missed it. In fact, take a look at this one here. Okay, this is Hope, and she's supposed to name the quadrilateral. Bob, Sam, Kate, Harry. In her mind, she's thinking, this is so obvious. But okay, we can name shapes if you want to do that. Now, we know that that's not the goal. Here's another one, okay? Find the difference between 8 and 6. Well, 8 is all curly, and 6 is not. It's common sense, right? Okay, here's my favorite. What ended in 1896? 1895. I can do this all day, keep them coming, It's so simple. Now, we look at those and we think, okay, it was obvious to you, but you were wrong. And for many of us, when it comes to money, it seems obvious to us, but we're wrong. In fact, I was listening to a podcast recently, Freakonomics Radio. I don't know if you've heard of this podcast, but it's kind of the hidden side of everything. And they were interviewing a guy who'd written a book about money, and he made this bold statement. He said 70% of Americans are financially illiterate. They just don't understand things about how money works and compound interest and all those kind of things. And here's why. He said, because for many of us, especially the millennial generation and Generation Z, the next generation, we grew up in a situation where we never managed money. We didn't have a little job that we got a little bit of money, or we had, had a little job after school or whatever, because we were so involved with extracurricular activities. And we didn't even have allowances. And so our parents would just give us money, and we didn't really know how to manage it. We just spent it. And then we're thrown out into the world where suddenly we have a checking account and a debit card and a MasterCard and all these different things, and we just don't even know how to manage it. And he says, what we really need to do is come back to what is wise to do with our money. And at some point in your life and in mine, we start getting curious about it, and we do invest in books and courses and seminars and certain resources to help us with this. But what's interesting is when you look at the scriptures, there is such tried and true wisdom in there we find ourselves, even if you're not sure what you think about God, you look at this wisdom and you think, he's right. I mean, take a look at one of these. He says this, wealth from get-rich-quick schemes quickly disappears, but wealth from hard work grows over time. Now, we know this to be true. In fact, we know this to be true because we look at people and their stories of when they win the lottery, their lives are quickly ruined. We look at this when we look at athletes who signed the multi-million-dollar contracts, and years after they retire, they're broke. Because we recognize it is a get-rich-quick scheme. Now, you might think, well, that'll never be me. But don't we both tend to think about when I get that next client, when I finally get that bonus, when I finally sell this, or when somebody finally buys something, then my ship will come in. And he says, that may come, it may not come. But it's that hard work over time where your economy begins to grow. The same thing is true in your personal Uconomy as well. And these are some of the principles we teach in the financial freedom ministries. Things like, when it comes to your money, just spend less than you make. It seems obvious, right? But most of us spend more than that. In fact, look at what Proverbs says about this. Just as the rich rule the poor, so the borrower is servant to the lender. I mean, we know what this is like, right? When you go into debt, you feel like I am enslaved to this organization, this company, and they keep coming back. They want their money, they want their money, they want their money, and suddenly you feel what it's like to have a master card. See how that works there? Exactly. And it's now we're a slave to this lender. In fact, this is one of the principles we teach in the financial freedom ministries, this idea of snowballing your debt, where you decide to pay the minimum on all your credit cards, just long enough till you get $1,000 in your savings account as an emergency fund. Then you take as much as you possibly can and zero in on that first smallest debt till that's gone. Then you move to the next one, and you begin to have this sense of success as you go. That's just investment wisdom. And we need to invest in that kind of wisdom. Take a look at this principle that we keep talking about, and that is money fills your life with stuff, but God fills your heart with satisfaction. Okay, so seek wisdom. That's number one. Here's number two, and that is understand delayed gratification. It's better if you wait. Now, you've all heard of the marshmallow test that was done some 45 years ago, where they took these poor kids and they put them into a room individually, and they said, I'm going to put a marshmallow on the table. And when I leave, you can eat that, but that's the only one you'll get. But if you don't eat it, when I come back, you get two. And they leave the room. Now, some kids just said, all right, and they ate the marshmallow. So they thought, I don't know if you're coming back. I don't know if this is real, if I can believe you. I'm just going to eat the marshmallow. But other kids decide to delay gratification. And they would not look at the marshmallow. They would talk to it like, I'm not going to eat you, or they'd go over in the corner and sing and try to distract themselves because they wanted the second marshmallow. Now, here's what they did. They followed those kids for the next 40 years and just looked at their lives. And here's what they discovered. Those that delayed gratification had better SAT scores. They got into better colleges. They made more money. They were healthier. They lived longer. But those that jumped into immediate gratification had a marshmallow addiction? I'm kidding. No, but they did. They did struggle with obesity. They had trouble keeping a job, saving money, and the like, because there's something about this whole delayed gratification thing. Now, you may be thinking, but I was raised in a home where we did not delay gratification. It was feast or famine all the time, and I get it. But you can train yourself to think another way. Personally speaking, I was raised in a home with a dad who had a mentality of buy it, we'll figure out how to pay for it later. Charge it, just get it. And so that mentality was kind of ingrained in me, and I find that kind of creeping into my subconscious at times when I see something, especially in our home, and I think, oh, we should get this to fix this and make this better and all that. And in an effort not to forget, I'll just go out and buy it, figure out how to pay for it later. And it always gets me into trouble. But what I've discovered is when I back up just a little bit and I actually write it down and think, yeah, we should get that, but I'm going to write it down and wait a week. You know what happens in a week? Either I've forgotten about it or I've discovered I didn't need it in the first place. You can retrain yourself how to think. In fact, look how Proverbs talks about this. Those who love pleasure become poor. Those who love wine and luxury will never be rich. In other words, if it's just about instant gratification, you're always going to be left wanting. In fact, take a look at what these two authors say about this principle. The single biggest threat to our own well-being tends to be ourselves. Without even giving it much thought, we allow our short-term decisions to override what's best for our long-term well-being. I mean, a lot of it for us could be simple as going back to cash and just using cash, because that is a lot harder to get rid of, because you want to hang on to that, right? When you got a card, it's just fictitious money. You don't even know. You're just swiping it left and right. I mean, think about the words we use. You swipe a card. That's easy. But to do this, you got to break 100. That's painful. I'm going to break it. I don't want to break it. I'm going to hold on to it, right? And so you have to change the way that you think about things, and maybe it is just simply as carrying cash and going that way, which brings us back to our idea, and that is money fills your life with stuff, but God fills your heart with satisfaction. Okay, let me give you one last principle, and that is this. Refresh yourself by refreshing others. Here's what I mean by that. Look at what Solomon writes here in Proverbs. The generous will prosper. You would think it'd be just the opposite. The stingy prosper. Those who hoard prosper because they just have more stuff. No. Generous prosper. Those who refresh others will themselves be refreshed. He says, if you want to prosper, get really good at unclenching your hands around your stuff and share with others and be generous with others. And I know the pushback because I've had it as well. We don't know what they're going to do with that money. That's up to them. Yeah, but if I give him $10 on the side of the street, I don't know what he's going to spend that on. That's up to him. That's between him and God. Between you and God, we're supposed to open up our hands, and he says, if you do, you will find so much joy coming back to you. And here's what's fascinating. What they discover is a lot of people that do this and practice this, they end up being some of the most wealthy people in our country. In fact, there's an author who's also a Jewish rabbi by the name of Daniel Lapin. He's written this business book called Thou Shalt Prosper. And he says when it comes to the Jewish community in our country, it makes up only 2% of the population. But if you look at the Forbes top 100 wealthiest people in America, they make up 25% of that list. And so he's written this book called Thou Shalt Prosper, these 10 commandments of basically how to succeed with finances. And number 9 is this: act rich and give away 10% of your after-tax income. Now here's why he says this. Because in Jewish culture, they read the Old Testament, just like we do, even they would just call it the Jewish scriptures. And in there is a principle of giving back to God 10%. And he said, even if they're not necessarily practicing Jews, they practice this principle of giving 10% away, and they're blessed. He goes on to say that if everybody would practice this isn't even a religious book, this is a business book, but he says it's very interesting to note that some of the wealthiest people in America are practicing this principle. Look what he says in another part of this book. The internal quality that allows you to take your money and place it at risk on the table of your own enterprise is exactly the same quality that allows you to take your money and give it away to others. In each case, you have to develop a willingness to remove your money from safekeeping and essentially bid it goodbye. You can take your money and you can invest it someplace, that's great, and that's giving it away. But it's also so beneficial to literally give it to somebody else and let them be blessed. And he says, when you do that, it not only impacts you emotionally, but also even financially. I hear stories all the time around here of people that do this, and just ridiculous generosity and just the cool things that they experience out of it, but mainly just the way they feel. I think about a leader here in our church just a couple weekends ago. He says he has a daily practice before he leaves the house. He just checks his wallet to see how much money he has on him, just so he knows. It's just kind of a habit that he has. And he said, my wife and I have been saving up for a trip to New York, and I just happened to have a lot of cash on me, and I looked at my wallet. I had $282. And I headed out to come to church. He says, I was walking through the lobby at church, and I noticed that the prayer team was particularly busy praying for people after a service. And I looked over, and I noticed a woman was waiting to pray with somebody, and I thought, I can pray. So I walked over and said, can I pray for you? She said, yeah. And he goes, well, what's going on in your life? She said, well, I lost my job a few months ago, and I got behind on my rent, but now I have a new job, and I can pay the rent. It's just that I owe the last month's rent and the expenses and the fees of being late and all that, and I can't pay that. And even though I can pay next month's rent, they're going to evict me this coming week if I don't pay that money back. And he said, well, out of curiosity, how much money is it that you owe? And she said, $282. And he said, I just felt God say to me, you can pray for her and hope somebody else meets her need, or you can be the answer to her prayer right now. And he said, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to pray, but we're also going to meet that need. And he gave her $282. Now, here's what's cool about that. Here's what's cool about that. If you want, I'll tell you his name. He's got $1,000 on him today. So if you want to go up to him. What's really cool about that is, you would think that once he gave that away, he would just miss that and think, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. And he went home and he told his wife about it. And she's like, well, I'm so glad you did that. You needed to do that. And he said, the joy that I've had from that has overwhelmed me at the chance to be able to do that. Now, you want that. You want to be part of those kind of stories. You want to be on the giving end of that, not just the receiving, because when you refresh others, you yourself are refreshed. It is amazing what God does in our hearts, not just in our bank accounts, but in our hearts when we decide to get generous with Him. Now, there are so many people around here that have learned that, but I wanted you to hear from this couple. Take a look at their story.
I'm Danny, and this is my wife, Melissa. I'm the Executive Director of Communications at Real Life Church.
And this is our real life story.
We met at a Halloween party through a mutual friend. It was love at first sight for me, but she did not think I was the cutest thing in the world. So
You're super nice.
Yeah, I was nice.
I thought you were so sweet. We've been married for 10 years. We have 2 girls. One is 9 and the other is 8.
Growing up for me, it was the normal typical family up until my parents got a divorce when I was 11. So from that point on, it was just my mom and my 2 sisters. And at that point, I became like the head of the household. And so being that my dad didn't give us child support, it was basically my mom, you know, trying to raise 3 kids on her own, working pretty much 3 jobs at any given time. So money for us just wasn't something that we ever really had growing up. I look back now and I don't understand how she did it, but I just honestly feel even back then didn't really know God or understand God. I just feel like even then God was really protecting my family, just because looking back, I don't understand how we were able to live, honestly. I came to God just through, it was kind of later in life, because I had a coworker of mine that he broke up with his girlfriend, and at the same time I actually broke up with my girlfriend. So we kind of were crying on each other's shoulders for a little bit about that, and he invited me to church, and then I just kind of stuck around and realized that Christians aren't a bunch of crazy wackos, that they're just really, you know, great people just like me, having the same problems, same struggles. And just through that, reading the Bible and continually going, you know, I just eventually found Christ out of that.
Through being Danny's friend, him always going, let's go to church, you gotta go to church, you need to read the Bible. And I was like, I don't want to do any of those things. And I went one Easter service. It was great, loved the message. Kept going ever since.
I had been volunteering for so long at the church that they basically offered me a job. I didn't really think twice of it for whatever reason. I just felt God calling me there, and I just decided to listen to the calling and go. So as far as the whole concept of tithing, for me it was always difficult. Like it's just, I always felt like it was kind of my money. I worked hard for it, but for whatever reason, it just felt like money was always the most difficult part. And again, I don't know if that was because I grew up with no money.
Tithing was kind of an issue for me. You need to give 10%. I was like, say what? I was like, what happened to the dollars that you just put in and pass it? What's wrong with that?
Before we started tithing, I mean, I always felt like money was this struggle.
At least for him being the sole provider, Danny was stressed out, like constantly.
And they say typically 75% of marriages end in divorce because of money problems. We were constantly just always talking about money.
Everything went back to money. You're on a date and, you know, you're talking, all of a sudden the conversation comes up of, well, financially this is an issue, we're having a problem, this is where we're at, we need to really budget. And that becomes your one date away from your kids, right. You're arguing about money.
Well, for me, tithing is just, it's a biblical principle. I didn't have like a big epiphany, there was no big dream. It just, for me, it really was just the internal struggle of saying, hey, you need to be a good example. You know what I mean? If you are legitimately saying you are a Christian, if you are legitimately saying I'm a Christ follower, this is one of the biggest areas you're not willing to give up. So for me, it was just one day I was like, you know what? I gotta do it. Like I need to just start giving 10%, whether we can afford it or not. I need to just be honest about it and just do it.
After he decided that, I just said, okay, go for it.
Once we started tithing, and again, it's still tight and it was still tough, you know, and it wasn't like it was just like instantly like, hey, you know, God's just, here's all this money all of a sudden and life's gonna be grand.
Yeah,
and this,
it doesn't happen like that.
Yeah, I mean, so there was still always a struggle, and there still is always a struggle, but we just don't stress about it anymore. I mean, it's not a point of contention in our marriage anymore, because we know that God has us and God's gonna take care of us.
You know, when you finally let go, start tithing, you can just breathe, knowing God's word is true. God is going to take care of us. God has us. Give it up to God. take it off our shoulders and just trust in His plan for us.
Once we just kind of just let it go and just gave it to God and said, God, you know what, we need to start tithing. And it just really it took that burden out. Because we tithe and because we know that money is going somewhere that we legitimately care about, it's allowed us to restructure and refocus the way we think about money. By tithing, you're helping sustain the church. You're helping sustain ministry. You're helping sustain lives. We look at what Real Life Church does, from all of our local to global to Halloween that we just had to our Christmas programs, to be able to allow the church to continually help people find and follow Jesus ultimately. I
continually show my trust in God that I'm giving you 10%. I'm giving you, what you ask of us, because I trust that though this might hurt at times, you have our backs. Like, you have us in the long run. You're going to take care of us. And time again, He's proven it every single month, every year, every time, always.
So, January 15th's coming. January 15th's coming, and we're all leery about that credit card bill, but what if not just the month of January could be different? What if 2018 could be different? What if we decided to put a few principles into play that not only makes the next year different than this year, but it literally changes our family's Uconomy, but also changes the way our kids view money? That would be a huge win for us. And so I would love for you to check out our financial freedom ministries around here. You can go to our website. We have a big event coming up on December 9th. It's a great way for us just to resource you and help you. But we'd love for you to experience what it means to invest in wisdom and learn just some biblical principles about how we can manage our resources. I think you'll be glad that you did. Let me pray for us. God, thank you for what you're doing in the lives of so many people, and for just the way that we see you continue to work. And the way we get to be a part of things that we could never do on our own, but together we could impact so many lives. We just want to be good stewards of the resources you've given to us. And so, God, right now as we prepare for communion, we just think about all that you've done for us by giving your Son to die in our place so we could have freedom from our sin. And we just think about the incredible generosity you've shown towards us. And we pray that you would give us that heart towards you and towards others as well. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.